Yeah, I've always been under the assumption that there's a shortage of multifamily projects in Phoenix. Am I wrong? Because it sounds like that, we've recuperated with more supply hitting the market.
We have an oversupply right now. In terms of what that number is, obviously, vacancy's been creeping up, whereas during COVID, it was probably, 5 to 6%. And now we're talking 7.5%, 8%. Vacancy. So the supply is definitely a factor in that for us. For instance, Q3, we're delivering another 7,000 units of multifamily, right? Apartments to our the Phoenix Metro that we have to absorb. On top of that, already additional, 8% of supply that's, call it stabilized properties that have vacancy. So that's a big number. And granted, we still have a lot of a good migration, a lot of good jobs, coming to the Phoenix market a little quicker than we can fully absorb. As far as the light at the end of the tunnel, I think probably Q1 for the multifamily space, Q1, Q2 of 27 is what, in terms of when we'll absorb all those units.
Welcome to the Jeff Sutherlin Show. Let's grow today as we learn from decades of real estate and leadership experience.
We want you to know that when you log into this show, you're going to get authentic conversation. We're going to give it to you straight, and it's going to be real. Jeff Sutherlin on the Jeff Sutherlin Show with my business partner, Chase Waldron. We are pumped that you're here with us today. We have Austin Harte here from Mark Taylor Homes. This guy has a just ton of experience. Before we kick it over to Austin, Chase, what's going on, especially in the new home space? We've been crushing it. Tell everybody the latest that we've been going through on your side.
Yeah, man, it's been great. We're working with a lot of buyers, a lot of good opportunities out in the new build space. We harp on it every week, but just 2 weeks ago, or actually last week, we were able to get a guy in at a new build community with a 3.75% interest rate for a 30-year fixed, which is drastically lower than the market rate right now. So it really helps the payment. And there are communities on the west side, east side, all over that are offering incentives like that. So it's really just a lot of good opportunities out there for buyers. So it's been a very good thing.
Yep. And as I said, I predicted this, and it's happening as we speak. The rates are trickling down, and the prices have been trickling down over the last couple months. And that's because the last few months, like 3-4 months ago, we saw a lot of price reductions. We saw a lot of concessions. And when you see these price reductions go into play, that's a lagging indicator. So if you think about it, somebody's writing a contract, it's closing 30 to 45 days out in residential, and then you're starting to see now the median sales price go down a little bit. So my next prediction is the second part of this year will be a huge buying opportunity. We're going to continue to see great leverage on the buy side. And then I believe in 2026, we're going to have an absolute explosion. There's hundreds of thousands of people on the fence that want to buy. There's also hundreds of thousands of people that want to sell because they're just tired of being locked in. Where they're at. They want options. They want some options. So I'm very optimistic going into 26. And so, that's kind of my crystal ball, but we wanted to kick it over to Austin. Austin is with Mark Taylor Homes. He has a very unique job. So Austin, I met him at the gym. The guy's a baller. He can whoop me in basketball, but he's a pretty smart guy too. So Austin, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jeff. Chase.
Absolutely. Could you tell us, Austin, a little bit about what you do? You're in multifamily residential. Can you kind of explain maybe a day in the life and what you do for Mark Taylor in Phoenix?
We only have a little bit of time, Jeff. If I was to, the day in the life, we need a couple days worth of time to explain it all. But so I'm a managing director with Mark Taylor Residential. We're a multifamily management company. Actually the second largest in the state of Arizona. We're just about 34,000 units in total. We have about just under 1,000 units in Vegas that we manage. So we fee manage, and we have about 15% of our portfolio that we own and manage as well. As far as that, every client's a little different. So, their strategy, they might be long-term holders, short-term holders, merchant builders, so forth. So every client's going to have a different, strategy from their business model. So a day in the life, it might vary depending on what property we're discussing.
Yeah, that's
Sweet.
interesting, man. So the owner managed properties versus, kind of the clients that you guys take on, that's basically properties that you guys at Mark Taylor purchase yourself versus other people that purchase these properties and then they need your management services. Is that kind of the two avenues that you guys operate in?
Yeah, and I would say so the properties that we own and manage actually start from, land all the way through, right? So we start from entitlements and then go from there. So that's, if we wanted to sell, which we have sold. I mean, we've developed over 35,000 units in the last 40 years, which is when Jeff and Scott, created Mark Taylor back in 1985. And it's, transitioned into, just under 35,000 units, which is phenomenal growth. When I started back in 2005 with Mark Taylor and as leasing. So I was on site at a property, San Marbella, which was a Mark Taylor developed site. Just started leasing and, had no idea what the industry had in store. And I was like, I kind of like this industry. So that's kind of where my world took off. And I was like, I'm going to keep moving the ranks. Became assistant, then a property manager, dual manager, and then a regional, and just really got entrenched with the business as a whole, and found out I loved it. The business, all facets of the business, and kind of hooked me. So 20 years here, later, here I am.
That is awesome, man. Yeah, that's since '05. So you've been in it in a lot of different markets, a lot of different seasons. I mean, that's pretty awesome, man. And you guys do build your own stuff basically from start to finish. So that's awesome, man. And the properties that the clients you guys take on, what kind of, is there all sorts of different clients, all sorts of different sizes of properties? Is there kind of a minimum unit count that you guys don't go below? What kind of a criteria do you guys look at when you're taking on clients to manage their properties?
Yeah, so I don't know if there's really a wheelhouse. I mean, it's definitely going to be a class A. So, kind of, we'll call it the school grading process. A is your top tier, higher rents. Your B class might be, solid products, good bones for a property, just more affordable, maybe locations a little rougher, or not as desirable. And then you go C and D product, which is less desirable, lower rents. So we specialize in the Class A portfolio. And as far as our client base, I would say anywhere from, the ideal unit count, I would say 200, 200 plus would be ideal. But we have properties that are sub 100, but economies of scale make it much more beneficial if it's that, 100, 150, 200 plus unit count. So we have anything from 50 units all the way up to, 505 units. And everywhere in between.
That's no joke. Those are big properties, man. So it's not like you guys are managing a fourplex or even a 12plex. You guys are managing big properties.
For sure. Well, yeah, and it's economies of scale. So, the fourplex. I mean, I think those are great starts. And actually, a lot of our clients, that's kind of where they started. They started the single family rentals, liquidated those into duplexes, fourplexes, 20-unit buildings, and then just kept that cycle going. And then we have some, that are at 1,000 units that they've invested in, 1,500, 2,000 units. It's a pretty cool cycle to see when they start with just one single family rental or investment home.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess for the listeners, I know we kind of touched on it a little bit prior to, but what makes you guys want to focus on, or I guess what are the determining factors for you guys to focus just on Class A versus, maybe B and C class properties? What are so good, or what is the benefit of you guys strictly managing Class A properties?
Yeah. So, with property management, there's hundreds of management companies out there, especially in, the US. Internationally, there's probably even, triple that. We've really branded ourselves. So we're a niche, more of a boutique style management company. And that's our expertise. So that's what we've grown up, knowing how to manage, the resort style, the level of standard that we, the 5-star experience we want to deliver to our residents. and actually really our team members too, our employees. Um, it's something that we've really held near and dear to our hearts, and that's kind of where our expertise has lied. Not saying we don't want to do it. It's just it gets convoluted when you start casting a wider net, and we wanted to be really good at one avenue as opposed to good at multiple.
Most definitely. Yeah, that makes sense. And with I guess it's a totally different tenant base as well, right? For some of these other classes, right? So when you're used to managing a certain, class A versus say a class C, it's kind of a different animal, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. So going through the different cycles, right? So the GFC, the Great Financial Crash, right, in 2008, we saw Class A renters kind of blend with the Class B, and then the Class C moved up because of the rates just really plummeted. Concessions were 2 months, 3 months free. The labor pool was a quarter of our labor pool in the Phoenix market was 25% construction. So losing all of that was a big hit to our economy, which thankfully we're not in that predicament anymore. So we've definitely diversified from our labor pool, as we sit today. But so yeah, to answer your question, I would say that's
that's interesting to hear, man, for sure. And then a lot of, I guess, seeing the multifamily versus the single family. I mean, we've talked to quite a few people who are, they've invested in single family homes, and obviously it's a different scaling opportunity, right, with multifamily homes. And you kind of mentioned it earlier, but I guess what are some of the benefits for people who are trying to get into investing in multifamily as opposed to single family? What are the pros and cons of investing in multifamily and trying to get into some of these maybe larger properties that, it's easy to scale on, but obviously bigger properties require, more funds up front and a whole nother, pile of problems along the way. So I guess what are the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have pros and cons. Any which way you go, right? So single family rental, I would say the biggest con, you have one single family rental, you don't have it rented, you're footing that bill, right? So that's out of your pocket. You're having to compensate for that AC unit, so forth. There's no other revenue coming in or being generated. So that's all on, you're basically operating the red. Whereas let's say you have a 100-unit building, you could have 10 units vacant, right? So you're sitting at 90% occupancy. Well, you have 90% funneling debt service, repair and maintenance, utilities, in our case, management fees, payroll for the on-site staff, so the manager, maintenance supervisor. And so you have additional funds that are able to compensate for that. So one move out is not the end all be all. So I would say that's the biggest pro and con. Single family to multifamily. And again, it's economies of scale. So if we're talking a fourplex, 2 vacancies is substantial. You still might be floating a little bit of the funds there, but
yeah, for sure. And do you see, so I know you kind of mentioned it earlier too, but do you see many people kind of starting off smaller and then kind of working their way up to these bigger properties? Or do you see a lot of people nowadays, kind of syndicating and investing with other investors in order to purchase some of these bigger properties? Are you seeing a lot of that?
Yeah, yes, to all of it, right? So you kind of have one spectrum all the way to the other and everywhere in between. So you have those that are starting small, doing single family rental, 1, 2, then liquidating, buying more. Then you have those that are going into an institutional, maybe a REIT, or somebody that's, funneling through a syndicator. So yeah, there's so many avenues to invest. I wish I knew all of them to relay, but yeah, so there's a lot of different avenues for an investor to go down.
I gotcha. And let me ask you this too. When you guys are taking on new clients, right? I would imagine you guys probably help manage properties or multiple properties for one owner. if that's the business that they're in, and they have you guys managing one property, you guys, knock it out of the park. Obviously they probably have you manage multiple properties, but when you guys are taking on somebody new, what kind of things do you look for in an owner, before you take on that project, and is there any, or are there any traits in an owner where you might say, hey, maybe the property fits, but maybe this owner doesn't quite fit our criteria. Maybe we don't want to work for this owner. Is there any of that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a job interview, right? Just as much as they're interviewing us to manage their asset, we're interviewing them to manage their asset, right? So the first thing is we want to make sure we're aligned. We want to make sure that the vendors are paid, which are extensions. So like a landscape contractor, an AC contractor, our employees, payroll. We want to ensure that they're being paid timely and, at a fair market value, right? We want to make sure that their level of standard, because we want it to feel like you're at the Four Seasons or the Ritz when our residents are calling their place home, because it is the most, aside from purchasing a home, it's probably one of the number one decisions that a person will make in their life, right? Is where they're going to live, whether that's rent or own. But in our case, rental is the name of the game. So that's a huge decision for them, and we want to make sure that they're treated really with kid gloves, that 5-star experience all the way around. So.
Hey, Austin, question. Do you do any commercial, or is it all residential?
Yeah, well, so it's all multifamily, no residential. We don't do any single family. And I think I'd mentioned earlier, I would say the smallest would probably be about 50 units, which are very few. We don't have very many of those. The average size property we have, I would say, is probably about 200 to 250 units.
Okay.
Per building.
Yeah, my specific question is you guys don't do any strip malls or anything like that. You guys are just doing multifamily, 50 units and above.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, you mentioned earlier that you really like this space. What do you like the most about it? Like in your job, what do you enjoy?
So I'm kind of like a squirrel, right? I'm left, right. As far as keeping the attention, it's tough for me. So it's something different every day, right? And as I mentioned before, our residents, it's one of their biggest decisions they'll make in their life, or as they make it through their life, is where they live, and just being part of that, seeing a couple that just met, then they have kids, and then their in-laws move in next door to them or something like that. So just seeing the progression of life that happens, and being able to provide an elevated, style of living for our residents. Actually, it's something I would say I can't even put a measurement to it. It's something I love, just being able to provide homes for, 60,000 plus Arizonians or Phoenicians.
That's cool. Now on the flip side, what do you not like?
I'll be honest, I love my job. I don't know. There's stressors, right? So you have somebody's AC that's not working, and you take that, or I've had fires, where it takes out a complete building, 20 units are completely, and trying to relocate those residents. On the real dark side, the suicides and deaths, things like that, I would say is the thing I dread the most. And then really terminations, right, with our on-site teams. That I would say that's probably my least favorite activity in terms of operations, right, is having to term somebody.
Yeah. And how has for just the multifamily space in general, I guess when it comes to buying and selling these, large properties like that, how has it been here in Phoenix, within the last year or two? Obviously we stay pretty ingrained in the residential space, buyers and sellers in that aspect. But on the multifamily side, what are we seeing in the market nowadays?
Yeah. So, if you would ask me this question about 2 years ago, just call it post-COVID, right as COVID was ending, we had record transactions for multifamily, right? And I don't quote me on the exact number, but it was, I think it was over 250 transactions for the year. I want to say that was 23, 24, and this year, crickets, right? The volume has been very, very slow, right? Interest rates are high, things penciling just, still aren't moving. And then you throw on the supply. I mean, we had roughly 24,000 units that are going to hit the market this year, another 25,000 next year in 26, with the peak being in Q, or Q2 next year. So a lot of supply that's flooding the market, which is, I guess, a combination of COVID, right? Delays, construction delays, things like that. So people are just a little more reluctant to get out their checkbook and write those big tickets. And costs are, much more elevated than they were pre-COVID.
Yeah, I've always been under the assumption that there's a shortage of multifamily projects in Phoenix. Am I wrong? Because it sounds like that, we've recuperated with more supply hitting the market.
Yeah, so we're definitely in terms of being oversupplied or undersupplied. We have an oversupply right now. In terms of what that number is, obviously, vacancy's been creeping up, whereas during COVID, it was probably, 5 to 6%. And now we're talking 7.5%, 8% vacancy. So the supply is definitely a factor in that for us. For instance, Q3, we're delivering another 7,000 units of multifamily, right? Apartments to the Phoenix Metro that we have to absorb. On top of that, already additional, 8% of supply that's, call it stabilized properties that have vacancy. So that's a big number. And granted, we still have a lot of a good migration, a lot of good jobs, coming to the Phoenix market a little quicker than we can fully absorb. As far as the light at the end of the tunnel, I think probably Q1 for the multifamily space, Q1, Q2 of 27 is what, in terms of when we'll absorb all those units, 50,000 units.
I can't remember who I heard this from, if I spoke to somebody or maybe read it somewhere, but are you seeing out there, a lot of maybe buyers who came in and purchased properties on like a bridge loan around 2020 when rates were super low and then they skyrocketed? And then that kind of put some people in some hot water and then having to, distress sales. Are you seeing, or are we seeing a lot of that, or is that kind of just a myth?
Knock on wood, we haven't seen that yet. Now there's been a few, one-offs that distressed properties have happened, but I don't think it's been something that I would say we need to cause alarm for. But yeah, in terms of people purchasing, those that purchased 22, maybe height of 23, bought at the peak, they're not getting anywhere near the underwriting rents or NOI number that they had anticipated. So they're treading water, I would say. So there's definitely going to be some that we'll call it distress that we'll need to figure out a different game plan, or as you said, bridge loans. But in our world, not too many. Now, new development may be a different scenario, right? Because they have construction loans and they go to permanent financing. So that might be a different, different conversation.
Yeah. And how have the rental rates been? Again, it's something that I haven't really been too involved in, but on the rental rate side for multifamily over the past couple of years, have we seen those decline at all, or have those stayed pretty steady the last couple of years?
Yeah. So rents, during COVID, we saw unprecedented increases, right? So 30%, 35% increase. Rents have definitely compressed, call it 2025, where we're not seeing those anywhere near those growths. We're actually seeing some negative trade outs or losses in rents, right? So rents are definitely going backwards at a slower pace, right? It's 2-3% that they're falling. But in terms of Phoenix compared to every other major market, so we'll just take a few, Seattle, Portland, anywhere along the coast in California, Chicago, New York, their debt to income ratio for rents are about 50%. We were during COVID, we shot up to about 23% of our residents' pocketbook was going towards rent. So we were still a very affordable market. After COVID, we actually dropped down to about 18%. So we still have, some movement to go in terms of affordable rent, meaning we have some room for rents to increase.
That's it.
So good news for investors.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I was going to ask you, Austin, Can you think of any emerging markets that you would consider or maybe recommend to investors? Right, I'm a big believer in Pinal County, for example. I just bought some homes down in Coolidge, and I believe in a lot of good things that are happening out there. And we've been thinking about Pinal County for 20 years. Is it going to pop? Is it going to pop? And now I start seeing some businesses moving in there, some manufacturing and such. So do you see any, I guess, some opportunities in the future if you're in the path of growth, right, for investors for larger scale projects? Do you see anything like that? I'm sure you guys have some really good data mining that you guys do there.
Yeah, well, and it's really going to revolve around jobs, right? Schools. So what's drawing the masses to that particular market? I do like Pinal as well, Pinal County. Maricopa is one that I think is an up and comer. I wish it would be a little quicker with that 347 expansion that's, was approved. I think I might be gone into the other life before that is actually done. But, so yeah, I think jobs are the biggest market, derivative. So you have Lucid, as far as Coolidge, again, I think there's a lot of, and the infrastructure, right, where freeways are going. So I think Buckeye, I think a lot of that, west market right now, it's overly saturated with, single family homes, multifamily. But I think that's going to be another kind of key market as well, because you have the freeway that's going to go from Vegas to the 10. And then they have that kind of that circumventing freeway that's going to be south of the 10. That's going to go from Buckeye to, I think, the 202. I'm not sure. I think it might be SR 88 or something like that. But so I think, job force or labor pool, schools, as long as you have those kind of key factors that are driving people to it, I think that's going to be your biggest indicator. So as far as markets that I would, suggest, and Phoenix specifically, I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's funny. You're right. There's a lot of indicators to look at. Inflation, wage growth. Wage growth is up in Phoenix. It's fantastic. And it's like 8-9% in the last 12 months. And our inflation is lower than the nationwide inflation rate, much lower, which is good. Labor's up. Good job markets coming into Arizona, a lot more tech, a lot more of a diversified economy, which we didn't have before. 20 years ago, it was a lot of housing, right? And now we got medical, we got tech, we got all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty exciting right now to be in Phoenix, all the growth.
Well, and as you know, the water issue, granted, water is always an issue. We're in the desert, but it's not as, red flag as that article that came out, 2 years ago, saying we were out of water kind of deal. It's not as dire as that. We have actually our water management, that's done here in the city of Phoenix. Well, really Arizona as a whole is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's I've gone to classes on water management, and it is really truly amazing how well we've managed it with the treaties we've signed. And a lot of people don't realize a lot of the water gets used by farmers, and because of the farming slowly being eroded, we've had less water demand. The Salt River project, the Central Arizona project, the Colorado River does a good job supplying us. But it's interesting when you talk about water rights and such. There's a lot of debating and a lot of negotiating between states and even Mexico, right? Because downstream, Mexico needs that water too. So, but overall, we're in good shape. We're in good shape.
Absolutely. Well, they were saying, I read something. They were saying we've used less water today than we did in 1957. Population was a fraction. Yeah. But it's because of agriculture, right? So so much more water is utilized with agriculture, where obviously that's been almost completely, depleted now. So I just thought that was an interesting stat.
Wow. Did not know that. Well, what else, Austin, do you think we should have asked you today that maybe you'd like to share with anybody? Is there anything that you'd love to share about what you're doing and, your day to day? And it's kind of fascinating what you do, because you manage some pretty large projects.
Yeah. So, I'm responsible for roughly about 4,500 units, collectively. And, it's, call it 4 to 5 clients that own the the bulk of those. So my job is client facing. So I, make sure that their budgets that are put forth, well, I take care of the budgets with them, right? We collectively go through those and see what our, I guess call it forecast looks like for the upcoming year, making sure that we're meeting those numbers, and really just, operating to as efficient as possible, especially given the landscape today, right? Concessions, where free rent has really come back into the market. There's been, it's something kind of, 2008-esque, where concessions, people are giving away gift cards, all sorts of different, I guess, one-offs that during COVID, you didn't see, right? Somebody had a pulse, they were renting. Whereas now people are having to kind of go to old school guerrilla marketing, hitting boots on the pavement, chicken suits on the corner kind of deal. But yeah, so that's kind of a day in my life. I'm just, trying to pivot. And again, I love what I do. I love our team. Without the team, there's no Mark Taylor. So our employees are everything. So
yeah, that's great, man. And for buyers that are coming in and maybe they're past clients that are looking for more properties here in the Phoenix area, or maybe out of town buyers that are looking for properties here, do you guys kind of help? I would imagine you guys kind of help, even before they have or before they own the property, if they're looking to buy something new, do you kind of help them with, hey, what they should be looking for? If you're the boots on the ground here, kind of helping them identify certain areas. And are there any other items that basically you help them look for, or anything like that? Do you guys provide a lot of that help up front for a buyer that's looking to purchase something and then use you guys to manage?
yeah, absolutely. So now, as far as finding an actual asset for them, we can kind of point and direct them. Obviously, the brokers in this market space, so your CBREs, your IPA, those brokers are going to have the listings, and based on the investor's qualifications, purchasing power, so forth. That range is so wide, right? So, but yeah, we can even partner. We've partnered, LPs with GPs or vice versa, just trying to help people find capital stacks. But yeah, so we'll do an underwriting. If there's a property that an investor is looking at purchasing, we'll do underwriting on it, on what and it's real numbers, right? Anybody can put any number on the paper, but we want to know if we went in today, what we would operate at, true numbers. We'll do due diligence for them. So, when there's once they're selected as the buyer, there's that inspection period that we'll have a roofing vendor, AC vendor come out and do all the inspections. We'll come in with our transition team, do a file audit, just to ensure that the investor is getting that the property they're purchasing there's no, I guess, covers over the eyes kind of deal. Everything's out in the open, and whether it's a good purchase or not.
Yeah, that's huge, man. And it's on a totally different scale than a house too, man. What is the typical due diligence period? Is it like 30 days that you get to kind of go walk every single unit and look at everything? Is it 30 days or is it longer than that?
Yeah, so it's gonna vary by the size of the project. I would say just on average is probably less than 10 days would probably be the
wow.
Yep. And obviously we, with multifamily, there's statutes that are in place. We, whoever's managing the property currently, they would serve a 48-hour notice to enter to every unit, and then we would schedule, hey, we're going to be there Thursday and Friday between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and inspect all these units. And we have a team, so we'll have somebody that's going through with the iPad and, basically taking notes. And then those notes get compiled and put into PDF in a clean, report. And that's what they, whether they want to do a haircut on the price or retrade, with the roof, if the roof's bad or whatever the circumstance is.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize it was, the same 10 days. I thought it was longer than that, being, if you're looking at a 200 unit property, that's fast.
Sometimes it could probably end up being 30 days. Obviously there'll probably be requests for, extensions or something to that extent, but it's pretty seamless with our team. It's just one unit multiplied by 200, right? So it's the same thing, just notating what's what in each different unit. So,
and I would imagine that Class A properties are, typically in pretty good condition, right? Seeing as they're newer, and it's a lot different than looking at a 1960s vintage.
So yes and no. Depending on when the deal was built and who the developer was, you could find something that was 2018 developed, and you would find a 20 or a 1960. I would take the 1960 over the 2020. And it's just, they cut corners, it was just it's really lipstick on a pig. I don't, in terms of so there's, it's that. And that's why due diligences are, so important, really seeing what's behind the curtain, so to speak.
Man, that is interesting.
This has been great, Austin. If you've been listening, you're listening to Austin Harte. He was with Mark Taylor Homes in Phoenix, and I think earlier he said they're managing like 34,000 units, and that's pretty spectacular. Austin, how can people get a hold of you? And if any last word you want to share with our audience before we say goodbye today?
Yeah, I mean, as far as getting a hold of me, Mark Taylor, mark-taylor.com is our website. Obviously, there's a majority of all of our sites are on that platform. I'd encourage all the listeners to just take a peek and just kind of see what we are, what we're about. And as far as the questions or anything, my contact, I mean, I have a bio on there, so they're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I can answer any questions. And no, I appreciate you guys having me. I mean, I don't have.
This is great. I appreciate it. And last question I actually wanted to ask you, Austin, is do you guys hire on a regular basis? And if you do, what kind of people are you looking for?
Anybody and everybody, but yes, we do. So we're about 850 employees total that we have within our company, which is ever growing. And actually at the mark-taylor.com website, there's a careers page that, really ranges from maintenance to on-site, admin, manager, HR, training and development, accounting, and really anything and everything you could possibly think of. It's probably on there to be applied for.
So, Austin, thank you very much for your time today. This has been awesome.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'll just say thank you. And we've learned a lot today. This is a pretty cool segment. Chase, I learned a lot. I know you know a lot about more about multifamily than I do when it comes to projects of this side, but I thought this was pretty cool. What do you think?
Yeah, man, it was awesome. We appreciate it, Austin. I learned a lot today, man. I think our listeners have learned a lot today. So we really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Have a good day, everybody.